What's your view on the housing market?
So, if I look at where things have been in the last couple of months, 5% annual growth still looks a long way away.
The economy is improving. That part is true. Activity's picking up, confidence is firmer. Some numbers are finally moving in the right direction, which is exactly when people start assuming the danger has passed. But economic improvement and personal risk don't move together. They rarely travel in the same direction. From the pavilion, the match looks under control. From the crease, the ball can still be doing plenty. We're joined again by Westpac Chief Economist, Kelly Eckhold. Kelly, when economists say the economy is improving, what indicators usually lead that story and which ones tend to get left behind?
Well, usually at the early stage of the recovery, we're focusing on softer indicators like indicators of business confidence and consumer confidence. We also get some harder statistics. For example, we do get some weekly readings on the number of new jobs that are being paid for in the economy. So that's actually something we've increasingly looked for. And we do get monthly reads on a whole lot of other things like purchasing manager indices, which tell us how firms are feeling on a month-to-month basis. And we also have things like consumer spending as well, so we can kind of see how much money people are spending in stores on their credit cards and debit cards.
If inflation pressures stop falling rather than disappear, how does that affect the risk carried by individuals?
Well, it's all relative to what they're getting in their wages, right? So, and that's where the real difficult situation has been for the household sector in the last couple of years. Wage growth has been decelerating. It's kind of like getting down now towards 2% per annum. But at the same time, the prices of things they could buy at the supermarket, necessities, these have been rising, 3% or perhaps higher. I mean, food prices basically rising 5% per annum at some stage in the last year or so. So it's that squeeze, isn't it, between what you're getting and what you're paying, which has really been the problem.
The report shows stabilisation rather than resolution in several areas. In cricket terms, is that the pitch easing or has it just stopped deteriorating?
I think we're in a process. I mean, we've probably gone through the stopped deteriorating part of the cycle, and we're now in the early stages of the improving part of the cycle, I think is the way of thinking about it. But there's a long way down the road to go before we can say that, yes, we're in full recovery.
How long is that road?
Or I would say, looking at our forecasts, we think we'll get maybe 3% growth this year. And if we get that growth this year, I would say that's when we're there.
Why do people tend to equate a steadier run rate with safety, even when the field is still set tight?
Well, I mean, uncertainty is, and that's what I would sort of like take from what you're talking about in terms of like a steadier set of conditions. I mean, that does basically cause people to freeze sometimes. Businesses, if they're not too sure of the outlook and then they see a lot of uncertainty, might just say, well, I'll hold off hiring and investing for a while. Consumers might shut the wallet because they're afraid of something that would happen. And that was certainly a story that was quite prominent through 2025. Every night when you went home and turned on the telly, you heard about Donald Trump doing something that appeared to be pretty crazy. Increasingly now, though, I think people are seeing a different set of circumstances. The news they're seeing as being ones of, perhaps people getting jobs, of business conditions improving. Probably the weather also helps as well.
Yeah, that is a bit of a factor, isn't it? Like, I may have mentioned this to you before. Australia, when you go to Queensland, it just feels like the lucky country because the sun's out. Is that historically a factor as well? Can you link business confidence to the sunshine?
I no, we have to always seasonally adjust data because different things happen in different times of the year. But even despite that, what we have noticed in output and GDP in the last couple of years is some of those seasonal patterns look to become more pronounced. We've seen a tendency for there to be a lot of optimism and activity appearing to happen through the summer period, But then when you're getting into April and May, it's looked surprisingly weak. And that's certainly been the case in the last couple of years. And if I think about that sort of pattern, that's probably one of the biggest uncertainties that remains with me now. I see conditions in place as being very consistent with a good year for economic growth in New Zealand, but I am conscious that for in the last 2 years we've had things looking pretty good through January, February, and perhaps into March. But then when April and May comes, everybody has shut up shop. Firms have thought that they might struggle to kind of really thrive as they were going through the second half of the year. We need to kind of see the indicators, I think, through that April, May, June period to get a sense of, is this year going to be different? Are we going to see steady, increasing growth, or as that election gets closer in the second half of the year, are people going to go, oh, I might just stick to the sidelines here and see what happens?
What signals are institutions watching that tell them that risk remains?
Well, we are looking at signs of consumer and business confidence because that's one of the first things we can see. There are a few high-profile indicators out there that I'm not that focused on. Like if in the news flow, for example, you would have seen a lot of chatter about rising business insolvencies. But in large part, those are processes that go on for very long periods of time, and they reflect businesses that got in trouble or perhaps even died 2 or 3 years ago. And you're just seeing now the legal processes get to the point where firms are formally being shut. So those are things that I don't pay so much attention to. There are some kind of monthly reviews that we get of the credit quality of consumers. There's an outfit called Centrix that does a useful sort of review of credit demand and credit quality amongst households. That can give you a bit of a steer as well in terms of whether things are getting better or worse.
What's your view on the housing market this year? Has it changed at all since Christmas, where you predicted 5% growth?
Yeah, so it's still not got great momentum. So, if I look at where things have been in the last couple of months, 5% annual growth still looks a long way away. I've seen some of my competitors revise down their house price growth forecast for this year. And I can understand that, but then I also think that we've got a lot of water to go under this bridge in 2026. The interest rates are low, and we haven't really seen an improvement in the labour market yet. I think what you may find is that, yeah, things might continue to be a bit flat for 2 or 3 months. But if that labour market picks up in the second half of the year, then attitudes towards housing could change quite a bit.
At what point does believing the worst is over become more dangerous than recognizing that the game is simply slowed down?
I mean, I think you always have to have a realistic and careful view about what's going to happen in the future. And I think probably if I look back in the last couple of years, we have suffered from being overly optimistic in the first few months of the year and only to be disappointed later on. And I think the Reserve Bank will kind of recognize that as well. That for all of the forecasts, you actually need to see a couple of them come out. And that's why looking for more data as we go through the next 6 months to see to the extent to which the forecast is becoming a reality, I think will be pretty critical here.
Are you suggesting to me, or are you telling me that 2026 version of Kelly Eckhold is much more conservative in his predictions in January than the 2025 version or the 2024 version?
I think that's undoubtedly true.
Kelly Eckhold, thank you. Economic improvement doesn't end risk, it rearranges it. Some pressure moves off institutions, some shifts onto individuals. From the outset, the match looks calmer. From the middle, the margin for error can actually shrink. Most people don't get caught out because the economy collapses. They get caught out because it improves just enough for them to relax. Look, the numbers can look better. Exposure doesn't always follow.